Alright guys, so here's the review of the Cadisen C8221. So obviously, as you can probably tell, this is a Mondaine Homage. So it's not the first one I've checked out on the channel. I previously checked out a Bernie, which is Homage in the same watch. So it's been a while since I've checked out a Cadisen on the channel, but I have actually got one in my collection which I've had since pretty much the beginning of the channel. And that's this one down here. If you've not been around the channel that long though, you won't know that one, so I'll leave a link to that up in the top if you want to check it out. But getting back to this one. So I'll quickly pop the watch to one side for a second, briefly go over the packaging, but we're not going to go into detail. So it's pretty basic packaging, nothing too fancy. Got the Cadisen branding on there, cardboard box. And then we've got the usual stuff you'd expect in there. Instruction manual, warranty card, etc. But as I say, we're not going to go into detail on that. So pop this to one side and get right down to the watch. And here it is. So it's a pretty good looking piece, I think. Usual kind of thing you'd expect from Mondaine Homage. Nothing too out of the ordinary. But before we get into any more detail on this, let's go over the dimensions. So we've got a diameter of 40mm, thickness of 11.3, lug width of 18, and then the all-important lug to lug is coming in at 47.8. In terms of weight, on this supplied Milanese strap, it's coming in at 93 grams, and it is a pretty nice strap as well. So I'll quickly show you what it looks like, get a bit of a wide shot on it. As I say, it's a nice strap, nice and comfortable. When it comes to the clasp on it, that's unsigned. When it comes to the rest of the strap, it's nicely done. Nothing too fancy, but a good quality one. But where it does get interesting is this case back. So this is not something I've seen before. Pretty interesting design with this. I'm still not entirely sure whether I actually like this or not. If you can have a display case back, I'd like to actually see the movement, but that being said, the movement in this is an NH35, so not the best looking of movements anyway. So I guess this is kind of alright. Personally, I'd probably prefer a solid case back though. But either way, it is something a little bit different and a pretty cool effect. So in terms of the rest of the case back, you can see we've got some specs around the outside there. The usual kind of stuff. So stainless steel, water resistance 50 meters, and then the Cadisen name and model number. When it comes to the case, we've got a fully polished case. Nicely done, nothing too fancy. And we've also got that unsigned crown there. Nice curvature to those lugs though, so it will help conform to wrist nicely. But because it's polished, it will actually gather fingerprints, as you can probably tell. So give it a quick wipe, try and clean it up a little bit. When it comes to the crystal on this, you can see we've got a perfectly flat crystal on there. No protrusion or curve or anything at all. So we'll be checking in a bit if it is sapphire. Flicking around to the front. So you probably noticed when I was reading out the dimensions earlier that 18mm lug width is a little bit strange, given it's a 40mm diameter. Personally, I would have preferred if it had been 20mm lug width. I think it would have just suited the proportions a bit better. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Anyway, getting onto the dial. So it's a fully printed dial, nothing applied. Got the Cadisen branding at the top, and then automatic at the bottom. And in terms of text, that's all we've got on there. Then we've got that date window at the 3 o'clock. I know some people aren't keen on date windows on watches like this. I personally don't mind it, but I would have preferred it down at the 6 myself. In terms of the hands, got really nice, simple black hands on this, contrasting nicely with that dial. And you can see it's probably got a slightly off-white colour. And that's because it is a fully loomed dial on this, which we'll be checking out in a bit. When it comes to the second hand, we've got that red lollipop there. Personally, I think it's a touch on the short side. Would have been better if it had been just touching the edge of those indices. But other than that, the proportions on the hands aren't too bad. But now, let's check out whether we have actually got sapphire crystal on this, using the trusty diamond selector tool. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal. So quickly flick it over and check out the back. And that is just mineral crystal, which is a little bit disappointing, but not really that surprising given the price of the watch. So forgivable. So now let's go over the movement in this. And as I said earlier, it is an NH35. So when it comes to the crown, we've got a push-pull crown, no screw down. So just pop it out to the first position. Then we can change that date. Pop it out to that second position, second hand stop, so we've got hacking. And then we can obviously just change the time. All works well, as you'd expect with an NH35, no issues there. Pop it back in, second hand re-engages. And then we can just hand wind it as well. So this is one of the big advantages over the Bernie that I mentioned earlier. With that one, it's got a different movement in it. That actually comes with the Miyota 8215, which isn't my favourite movement, doesn't have hacking, and it's also got quite a lot of rotor noise as well. So as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger than the Cadisen in terms of the overall proportions, especially with those lugs. The lugs are a bit longer, and obviously the lug width is quite a bit wider as well. So it's going to vary depending on which one you prefer. Personally, I think the Cadisen just looks better overall though, despite having that slightly odd 18mm lug width instead of 20. But let me know down in the comments which one do you think looks better. And if you want to see a full review of the Bernie, I'll leave a link to that up in the top here if you haven't already seen it. But getting back to the Cadisen, let's see if that fully loomed dial is actually any good. And there we go. So as you can see, initially this thing is like a torch. So we've actually got C3 on this, and as I said, it's a fully loomed dial as you can tell. So no loom on the hands or the indices, it is just the dial that's loomed. I do love a fully loomed dial, it's just a really cool look. And obviously as the hands start to move as well, you will get a little bit of dark patches underneath the hour and minute hands, because obviously they were blocking out the loom when it was charged up. So it's pretty consistent across the whole dial, no obvious patchiness or anything. And in terms of longevity, it's actually surprisingly good as well. So I can't remember if I've actually checked out any of the fully loomed dials on the channel. I'm kind of losing track of how many I've reviewed and what I've reviewed now. If I have, remind me in the comments. Anyway, getting back to this one. As I say, surprisingly good loom, especially given the price of the watch as well. So it's probably not going to quite last all night, but it's going to get pretty close. And because it is a fully loomed dial, even when the loom's quite faded, it's still lighting up enough to be able to see those hands because of the high contrast between the two. So you should still be able to use it even when it gets quite dim. So all that's left to do now is show you what it's like on wrist, go over the pros and cons, and then you can decide whether you want to pick one of these up. So here it is on my 7-inch wrist. And as I said, it does wear really nicely. With this strap you've got more or less infinite adjustment. And then with that fold over, would have been nice if it had been signed, but other than that, not too big a deal. And as you'd expect with this kind of style of dial, really legible, nice high contrast between the hands and the dial. And overall, pretty nice dimensions. Although I'm still not entirely sure about that 18mm lug width. I still think it looks a little bit small. I think 20 would have suited it better. But other than that, I can't really complain too much. The only other slight issue I have is that second hand. I think it could just be slightly longer, as I said earlier. If it was just touching the edge of those indices, I think that would be perfect. But that is just a minor thing. It's not like hugely short. The main thing is just that lug width. Personally, I think it would be better if it was 20. But other than that, I think it's a really good watch. They're the only slight issues I have. But even despite them, I think it's still a good overall package. With that NH35, the fully loomed dial, and obviously the design as well. Which, if you like this kind of design, I think this is probably the best AliExpress version I've checked out. Definitely better than the Bernie overall, I'd say. And if you are interested in picking one up, link will be down in the description as always. That is an affiliate link, will help support the channel, but you don't pay any extra. But that's it for this one guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.